I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch network. I want to discuss right now the very disgusting and despicable conduct by the radical right-wing extremist attorney general from the state of Indiana, Todd Rokita, and his relentless effort to retaliate and try to professionally crush and destroy the life of the Dr. Caitlin Bernard, who was the one who provided abortion care to the 10-year-old Ohio girl who was raped in Ohio and who left Ohio because after Roe v. Wade was overturned in the Dobbs decision, the Ohio law went into effect where there was no abortions allowed and no exceptions, even in the case of rape or incest, no exceptions in Ohio. And so Dr. Caitlin Bernard is the Indiana physician who provided abortion care on July 30th through an abortion pill to the 10-year-old girl who was raped. And after the information became public that transpired, you remember what took place at first, right? So first, Fox News and the Ohio Attorney General, David Yost, and others, they tried to claim that this was all a hoax, that this was just an attempt to undermine the Supreme Court, and that this was all fake and not real, right? Then the next thing that happened when it turned out, no, this was actually real, and all of the right-wing media had tried to gaslight everybody and claim that this was all a hoax. The next thing they did was to attack Dr. Caitlin Bernard, and then the Attorney General of Indiana, a right-wing Attorney General, was embarrassed that took place in his state of Indiana, so he went on Fox and went on the Jesse Water show and did a number of other interviews where he claimed that Caitlin Bernard failed to perform what's called under Indiana law preparing a termination of pregnancy report, which when there is abortion care for people under a certain age, within 3 days, one of these termination of pregnancy reports have to be filed by law. And here, Dr. Caitlin Bernard filed one, but nonetheless, without any facts, just completely lying. You had the Todd Rokita, the Indiana Attorney General, goes on Fox and just basically lies and claims that Dr. Caitlin Bernard has this history of failing to report when she had no disciplinary actions ever taken against her. And then he claimed that here, that he's looking into the facts, but it seems that she failed to report. And then there was the chyron on the bottom, Doc fails to report. And then they put Dr. Caitlin Bernard's face everywhere on right-wing media to try to dox and try to attack her. And then Attorney General Todd Rokita started sending out subpoenas and said that he was doing this investigation of her and that he was going to get her. And then when it became clear that she did, in fact, go through all of the appropriate processes and procedures, Indiana University confirmed that where the hospital that she works, claims that she engaged in no violations of any patient rights, no violation of any privacy rights of the patient here, that she appropriately filed the termination of pregnancy documents and went through all of the steps that she was supposed to go through. Todd Rokita felt embarrassed because he went on Fox News and did this and did this appearance where he lied. Let me just play for you this appearance that he made first. Then let's talk about what happened next. And then finally, with Todd Rokita now filing an administrative action against Dr. Caitlin Bernard to try to take away her medical license. That's what he just filed this week, trying to take away Caitlin Bernard's medical license, now changing his entire theory of why he's going after her, but also on things that have already been debunked. This is kind of a ruthless and despicable, extremist, authoritarian tactic being utilized by this Republican Attorney attorney general. It's despicable. But first, let's situate everything that happened. So here is Indiana Attorney General Todd Rokita a few days after the story broke, or shortly after the story broke, where the 10-year-old girl who was raped from Ohio couldn't get abortion care there, went to Indiana, got abortion care from Dr. Caitlin Bernard, and then Todd Rokita went on Fox News. Here is what Todd Rokita said. Play the clip.
We have this abortion activist acting as a doctor with a history of failing to report. So we're gathering the information, we're gathering the evidence as we speak, and we're going to fight this to the end.
So Todd Rokita was then caught lying because everything he said there was false. The chyron was false. And he made that statement in other places. She did indeed file all the appropriate documentations. And so she filed what was then called a government tort claim, giving notice that she was going to sue Todd Rokita for defaming her and for lying about her and for causing all of this harassment to befall her. So this is what she says. She goes in her tort claim, which is a precursor to a lawsuit when you're going to sue someone who is an agent of the state, in this case, the Attorney General. And this is what Caitlin Bernard said. She said, on Monday, July 11, 2022, Ohio Attorney General David Yost appeared on Fox News Prime Time with Jesse Waters and stated that there was, quote, not a whisper anywhere. So that's the first thing I was talking about, trying to spread that this was like a hoax. That evening, then on July 13, 2022, Indiana Attorney General Todd Rokita appeared on Fox Primetime with host Jesse Waters and targeted Dr. Bernard. Mr. Rokita stated, quote, and then we have this abortion activist acting as a doctor with a history of failing to report. We're gathering the evidence as we speak, and we're going to fight this to the end, including looking at her licensure. If she failed to report it in Indiana, it's a crime to not report, to intentionally not report. During the interview, a caption underneath of Attorney General Rokita and a picture of Dr. Bernard read, Doc failed to report abortion of abuse victim. Then it goes on to say that that was utterly false, that a simple check of her medical license shows that as of the date, she was in perfectly good standing. She was active with no disciplinary history, and any statement that she had a history of failing to report was made in the absence of any reasonable investigation and utterly false and defamatory. So Rokita wouldn't relent. And so in this time period, because he went on this mission to dox her on Fox, all these other radical MAGA supporters then filed consumer complaints against Dr. Bernard. So they filed complaints to the Attorney General's office, kind of like an echo chamber, right? It's like, we need someone to complain about her. Then the people complain about her. And now the Attorney General is like, well, I'm going to investigate the claims that I just fabricated about her. So I'm going to investigate those claims. But now that he was exposed that she did appropriately file all of the right documents, he was very embarrassed. And then she filed an action, not the defamation action, but she filed an action in state court where she basically said, we got to stop this guy from harassing me, judge. And the order hasn't issued yet in that case, but we got to stop this guy from harassing me. He's already, sending out these subpoenas to everyone, and he's out there just saying these false things about me, and he's conducting this bad faith investigation. Judge, I need you to make a ruling enjoining him to stop this abusive and harassing conduct. And in those proceedings that were initiated by Dr. Caitlin Bernard, where there was a hearing held last week, the Deputy Attorney General, Mary Hutchinson, was one of the people who testified, and her name actually appears on the new administrative complaint that was just filed by Todd Rokita to try to revoke the license of Dr. Caitlin Bernard. And get this, during that testimony, Hutchinson herself conceded when she was testifying that Dr. Bernard had properly and on a timely fashion reported the abuse as well to social workers within the Indiana University hospital system. And so, considering that she appropriately filed the termination of pregnancy report, that she did report to social workers within the hospital as she was supposed to, so she appropriately reported to the right people there, given that also we've also learned that there was already an Ohio investigation, a criminal abuse investigation going on in Ohio for the rape that had occurred, despite the fact that the Ohio Attorney General, Dave Yost, was lying all about this. That's why ultimately the social workers at Indiana, when they were looking at what was happening in Ohio, there was already an investigation, a criminal investigation into the underlying abuse taking place in Ohio. And so, and then Indiana University did an internal investigation and found that none of the privacy rights of the 10-year-old girl were violated here. There's no HIPAA violations at all, and that Dr. Caitlin Bernard acted appropriately. So what can Dr. Rokita even file an administrative complaint for? Well, he's contrived a theory that what actually should have happened here is that Caitlin Bernard herself should have went to law enforcement directly in Indiana, and her failure to go to law enforcement herself constitutes disciplinary action, that she violated her oath and she violated her responsibilities as a doctor because even though she reported it to the social workers and she reported to the appropriate people in-house, that she had a personal duty to report to Indiana law enforcement directly, and her failure to do that constitutes a violation of her responsibilities and her professional conduct as a physician in the state of Indiana. And even though Indiana University said that no privacy rights of the 10-year-old girl were violated, nonetheless, Todd Rokita in this administrative complaint said that by even referring to what had taken place in these vague terms as a 10-year-old girl, that violated the rights of the 10-year-old girl, and that exposed the 10-year-old girl to have her privacy rights violated. So Todd Rokita is saying that in the ultimate kind of gaslighting 101, that no, he's now trying to protect the 10-year-old girl, and that Dr. Caitlin Bernard failed to protect the 10-year-old girl. I mean, the ultimate gaslighting, the ultimate absurdity. If we go into the administrative complaint that was filed, and then you look at the remedies that Todd Rokita is seeking against Dr. Caitlin Bernard, it's saying that she's subject to discipline according to Indiana Code Chapter 25, 1-9, other disciplinary sanctions, and to pay the costs. And if you just go into what that actually means, it's permanently revoking a practitioner's license, suspending a practitioner's license, censuring a practitioner, issuing a letter of reprimand. So even though he doesn't say it, because he's probably too cowardly to say it in the complaint based on his, worrying that what's going to come out in the press, that he wants to revoke her license, that's actually what he's seeking in the administrative complaint that he filed. And when you go to the administrative complaint, and we'll just pull that up right now, he filed the administrative complaint under his authority as the Attorney General before the Medical Licensing Board of Indiana to revoke Dr. Caitlin Bernard's license. I mean, and then one of the other just completely despicable things about this is I had already told you that there was testimony in another proceeding already where the Deputy Attorney General had already testified that Caitlin Bernard had gone through the appropriate steps, and she had notified the social workers internally and in a timely fashion, and she filed the appropriate documents. Nonetheless, she signs this lawsuit. She signs this administrative complaint to try to revoke the license. You see her name right there, Mary L. Hutchinson. And so you want to know what Indiana did as well. So after all of this information that took place, that Indiana, this young girl who was raped got this abortion, or got abortion care in Indiana, Indiana then passed a very, very, very stringent law that bans all abortion except in limited cases of incest and sexual abuse and fetal abnormality, and where the life of the mother could have a fatal issue on the life of the mother, is what their new statute says. We've actually covered here on the MeidasTouch Network some of the floor debate, though, where lots of Republican Indiana legislators were arguing that even in cases of rape and incest, and where harm or death could take place with the mother, that even in those cases, there shouldn't be exceptions. The legislature didn't end up voting on that, but Indiana's whole response to being the state that provided, or having a doctor in the state who provided the care, abortion care, to the 10-year-old girl rape victim, was to pass its own draconian rules and laws, taking away the freedoms of women and girls. And it's just despicable. And now you have this attorney general targeting this physician, Dr. Caitlin Bernard, first defaming her and now trying to take away her medical license because this man, and let's call it like it is, Todd Rokita's frail male ego was harmed by the fact that this abortion care was provided, as he would think about, in his state. And how dare that take place? So I'm going to go after Dr. Caitlin Bernard. And you know what? That's really one of the main reasons why Americans rejected this type of stuff and will continue to reject this type of stuff by and large at a national level. I mean, it's people like Todd Rokita, these radical right Republicans who at the end of the day want the government to be involved, not just be involved, retaliate, arrest people, destroy lives if the government, if the Republicans can't use the government's arm to tell women what to do with their bodies or to tell people who they can love and who they can marry. That is what Republicans are focused on. They are the opposite of the Freedom Party, and they wield their government power like authoritarians. And that's why I think, look, this is an issue that should be getting more national attention. I know that large media, after they forget about the story, they move on, but it is vital that we cover this here. We talk about what's going on. We call Todd Rokita out, and we let people know that people like Todd Rokita are what's wrong with America. It's these men who believe that they are superior. It's these men who think that they should use the power of the government to take away freedoms of people, That is who Todd Rokita is. He's despicable. In any event, I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Our thoughts are with Dr. Caitlin Bernard right now, and we're rooting for her. She's doing her job. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Hit the subscribe button. We're on our way to 1 million subscribers thanks to your support. And in addition, please check us out at Patreon by going to patreon.com/MeidasTouch. Become a patron. Become a member of the MeidasTouch Patreon site. We have lots of exclusive content there, but most importantly, help grow this independent media platform. We would so appreciate that. I'm Ben Meiselas. Until next time.
MeidasTouch is unapologetically pro-democracy. And look, we know you are too. So please make sure you check out our best-selling shirt and our best-selling gear, the unapologetically pro-democracy gear. And hey, while you're at it, make sure you check out my favorite shirt and one of our most famous designs, It Wasn't Rigged, You're Just a Loser, at store.meidastouch.com. That's store.meidastouch.com.